Good day, engineering thinkers, and welcome back to another episode of Engineering Thinking by IK. My name is Sean. I'm delighted to be your host once again. And if you're here because you want to broaden your horizons as an engineer or a non-engineer. If you have that curiosity to explore what it's like to be a complete engineer in the year 2025 and beyond, we have a place here for you. And boy, do we have an exciting episode for you today, because we have an incredible guest who's made time out of his very busy schedule to share some of his insights with you. Insights derived from nearly 2 decades of leadership positions, both abroad in the United States and also here in Asia, especially in Malaysia. He's someone that is passionate about changing lives at scale, and he's been at the forefront of so many different projects, such as wireless network technology, fiber optics. Now he's also looking into AI and other exciting projects for the future. This is someone that is a leader, someone that is an industry player, and also someone that has been recognized and awarded the Asian American Engineer of the Year Award in the United States. We're going to look at his illustrious career, and we're going to see if we can share some of his insights and wisdom with all of you. He is currently the CEO of YTL Communications. Mr. Wing Kay-Lee, thank you so much for joining us on our show today.
Hi, Sean. It's a pleasure to be here. And hi everyone.
So engineering thinkers, as you all know, we'll start the first segment, the journey. We're going to explore a little bit about Mr. Wing's background. So Mr. Wing, you actually studied information systems at the University of Texas in Austin, which is a city in Texas in the US. But you were also quite far away from home. You originated from Hong Kong, right? And so what drove you to further your studies in Texas, in the US of all places?
So I was raised by a single mother. I lost my father when I was 7 years old, and my late mother raised me the hard way and built her business and saved every single dollar to ensure that I have a bright future. And she told me one thing that woke me up. She said that, well, all these years I've been looking after you. It's time for you to learn to be a man. And the only way for me to do that is to send you overseas. So that's how I got sent to the US. Now, why the US? Well, when I was in Hong Kong, I could have gone anywhere, but I thought that my interest was in computer science. And I think it's safe to say that computer science is an area where US is very strong at. So I decided to go to the US. Now, I've never been to the US before. I have no friends, no relatives. So honestly speaking, to me, it's just a map. So I went to the library. So I went to the library and just read up the US map. I read up the college guide to research universities. If my interest was computer science, I want to go for some of the best programs in the US. And so my conclusion was that, well, UC Berkeley was very good. UT Austin was very good. And a few others like University of Wisconsin-Madison and so on and so forth, University of Minnesota. All public schools, because I wouldn't want to burden my mother too much. So of all the public schools, I think UC Berkeley would be my first choice. I applied to all of them. Fortunately, I got admitted to all of them. But then I did the calculation based upon the cost. So UC Berkeley was quickly out of the picture because it's too expensive to go to California. And Minnesota and Wisconsin, wonderful schools, but I checked the weather, it's too cold. So UT Austin then.
Right. So I want to ask you also, because it was a kind of an exciting time for personal computing. In fact, when you started your first year at the University of Texas, I was just born that year actually. And the year before that, the Apple II PC came out.
That's right.
So this was actually a very revolutionary course. Yes. And so that must have taken you some courage to choose something that was so new, so unknown at the time.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, my mother raised me single-handedly, starting her own business, and her business was in printing. So as a print shop business owner, she would go around and see her clients, right? And I would tag along sometimes, especially when I'm not at school, just to get a free meal, because usually after she sees her client, I get a free meal. So it's good. That's a good deal. So I would go with her, and I noticed one common pattern. A lot of her clients, they all have computers at the office. These are PCs, IBM PCs, or the so-called clones from Taiwan. But basically, they look like it's just a show-off item. It's not one that they're using to run the business. They're there just to impress people. They walk into the office, oh, this guy's got a computer. This guy's smart guy. So, because they really have no intent to really use it to run the business. And I thought that, well, something is amiss. If computing is getting personalized, if computing is getting distributed, then why is it not being used to run businesses, right? To drive actual automation and digitalization. So I always had this curiosity, right? When I was a young boy, following my mother around to seeing her clients. And I realized, and I fully understand, when I was in school, I also took computer science class when I was in high school. And I did pretty okay. So I knew that at least I have some capability in that area, perhaps potential. So I thought, when I go to the US, let me figure out how I can actually use computer and learn how to use it as a way to actually improve people's lives.
So, Mr. Wing, going back to your time in the States, now you were in a foreign land with foreign culture at that time. So from Hong Kong to the US, I think it would be beneficial for our viewers to understand what was your experience like. Was it very challenging for you when you had to go all the way to the States, for example, to learn this exciting new course in America?
Language was an issue for me. When I was in Hong Kong, I learned my English from British teachers. So the accent was a shock, especially I gone to Texas. Texas has a southern drawl. So some of the professors, I struggle understanding them. So that was interesting. But obviously, young people can adapt very fast.
Right.
And I was able to adapt. So after the first 2-3 months, I got a lot more comfortable, especially I have the opportunity to make some friends then. So that was all good. The first week was the hardest. Thereafter, it got easier.
I think that's very comforting to hear for our viewers who are beginning their engineering journeys, who might want to think about going overseas to start their studies. Now, you took information systems.
If I may add, back in the day, just to put things in context, in 1986, there was no such thing as Instagram. No such thing as Facebook Messenger. So my way of communicating with my late mother was international phone call, IDD. It was rather expensive.
That must have cost a fortune back in those days.
Absolutely. It was $2.50 US per minute.
Per minute? We can't, I mean, that's unthinkable in today's...
That's exactly why I got into telco, so I can fix that.
That's interesting, actually. I'd like to speak more on that. So that was your primary motivation to further explore?
I realized that things shouldn't be like this.
Right.
Communication should be something that's democratized for people.
So in the introduction, Engineering Thinkers, I introduced Mr. Wing as someone that was passionate about changing lives at scale. So obviously this is something that you felt very strongly about, because that phone call was your connection to your family, to your mother, right, from the States. And obviously, not only did you see the problem, you had the will and the conviction to actually change it for the better, right? So now obviously we have wireless networks, and something that you've pioneered over your very long career in the industry. The next thing I wanted to ask you was, when you were doing information systems, as we just discussed, personal computing was still very new, right, in the world. Did you have sort of personal challenges with the actual course material itself? Did you find it very difficult, or was it very because there was no precedent for it?
In the United States education system, they practice something called liberal arts education, which means that you have to take in courses that are not in your specific major to make you a more well-rounded individual, which I appreciate. But then I have to take a lot of classes like American history, American government, that I had zero background. American history, the only American history I know is Abraham Lincoln. And maybe Washington as well, but that's pretty much the entirety of the American history. So for me, it was a steep climb, right, compared to some of my classmates that are Americans. And when it comes to American politics, my only reference is the fact that that's the place called Washington, D.C., right? And I have no idea how things work. So that was a steep climb. But like I said, luckily, I was able to catch up. I think when it comes to the actual core curriculum of computer science, information system, luckily I started doing programming as a hobby when I was a kid. Since you heard from me earlier that I was raised by a single mother and she's very busy, I spent a lot of time at home by myself. So I picked up two hobbies. One hobby was photography, and the other hobby was programming.
Right.
So she bought me a PC clone, and I started playing games. And she said, well, son, if you want to keep playing games, then I need to give this thing away. So I started to learn how to program so I can keep the PC in my house. Otherwise, my mom would give it away. So, and I got into doing programming. I thought it's kind of fun.
So she kind of drilled that sense of productivity and creativity for you to actually make something rather than just consume. You sort of, she pushed you to create something, perhaps.
Yeah, because when I told her that I need a computer, my excuse was, Mom, I need to learn how to write program. And then she realized that, well, how come the guy's using a joystick for the most part? And so we realized something's off.
Right. So,
So I started to learn programming for real.
Right. So she
after a
was
few
very
weeks.
perceptive on the input mechanisms there.
Yeah. She's not computer literate, but she can tell looking at the screen. That's not programming.
So overall, would you say that you had a very good experience in the University of Texas?
Fantastic experience.
Yeah. And so you learned a lot about
I would
information
do it
systems.
over again.
You would do it over again?
And I'll do it the same way I did it, which is the hard way. No money, had to pay attention to how much money I spend, and have appreciation for things, and have that hunger.
Right. I think that's going to be very important, the hunger as well. So now, before we cap off this first segment, I want to ask you, when you're reaching the end of your studies in the University of Texas, how did you begin to plan your future in the workforce?
My plan was actually very simple. My plan was to go back to Hong Kong to see my mother and see my friends. So I had zero interest to stay in America. It's so funny. When I was applying for my student visa at the U.S. Embassy in Hong Kong, they asked a question, and this is a boilerplate question. It said, "Do you have any intention to stay in America after you graduate?" And if your answer is yes, then no visa for you, right? And I meant no. I actually meant no. Why do I want to stay in America? My mother's in Hong Kong. All my best friends are in Hong Kong. I love the food in Hong Kong. I mean, I do some burgers once in a while, but I won't eat that every day.
Right.
So why do I want to stay in America? So I had a very honest answer. No, absolutely no. But then again, something happened. And some would call it the Tiananmen Square incident. And those that are student of history, we know what happened. So that's not the topic of today. But due to that incident, my mother asked me to consider staying in America. So I had no plan. Therefore, I had no prospect lined up. And it happened so sudden. So I talked to my academic advisor. I said, well, how do I find a job? I'm only a few months away from graduation. And my mother asked me to stay back in America. And she looked at my transcript and she said, well, Wing, actually, you have taken some electives in the business school. I said, yes, because I'm kind of interested in business. Since I have a mother that's a businessman and businesswoman, and I wanted to see how computer science and business can merge. So she said that actually you're only 5 classes away from getting a second degree in business administration. So if you want to get a runway to apply for job, get interview lined up, then why don't you apply for a second degree, which I did. So I got a second degree, and through that, I was able to buy myself 6 more months, with which I interviewed like crazy, interviewed 20-some companies, and end up getting a couple of good offers, with which I picked one.
That's fantastic. So you already had the foresight of marrying the concepts of information systems, which back then was certainly a revolutionary sort of breakthrough field in personal computing especially, but also with business administration. So how did you actually thought about combining the two of them?
Yeah, because I want to know how the business will work. I want to know how things move in society. Since I had some exposure of that when I was a child, with my mother, small business owner, but nonetheless business, I thought it'd be nice to know how things actually work in the real world.
So we have basically a mother to thank for.
I'm eternally grateful, and I miss her every day.
Yeah, that's actually very inspirational, actually, to hear where your drive came from, and sort of the person, your mother, who was absolutely crucial, played a crucial role in your early development. Okay, engineering thinkers. So we've learned a little bit about Mr. Wing's background and as to his experiences in the US, and also his studies in information systems, which we also found out he also studied further in business administration. And he thought, how can I marry these two concepts? How can I understand and learn the intricacies of the internal mechanisms of basically commerce and information systems? So we're going to take a short break here, and we're going to come back with segment 2, which is going to be the highlight, where Mr. Wing is going to share a case study and some of his critical leadership insights with all of us. Stay tuned. Engineering thinkers, welcome back. We're about to start our excitement today in this episode with the highlight. So in the second segment, we ask our guests to share some case studies and also their insights, valuable experiences, and tips that they might have for all of you watching today. So, Mr. Wing, you're now the CEO of YTL Communications, and you were spearheading a lot of very innovative and exciting projects. And the one that you're best known for is going to be First to 5G. And I believe that you would like to share your experience heading that team, First to 5G in Malaysia. What was that like? And can you tell us in a brief summary your role and the kind of technicalities behind it?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, Sean. First to 5G, we launched 5G December 2021. But First to 5G started in 2010. So let me explain.
Okay.
And that's precisely why we have to think like engineers and act like engineers. Because first and foremost, we have to understand how technology evolves, right? And that's, I think, a little bit of value add that I bring to the organization, right? Is that I do understand what the evolution curve is. Having worked in the United States, built large-scale fiber optics network and wireless network, I do fully understand the arc of the technology evolution. And I realized early on the world is going IP, TCP/IP. IP is a protocol of the internet. And I also realized that telco network invariably have to move towards embracing TCP/IP, IP-based network. Now that's not the case when I first moved to Malaysia. All the network in Malaysia were circuit switch-based network, which represent the legacy past. And when you have a legacy network, it's very hard to retool to build a brand new IP-based network. And I had a good conversation with the board, and we agreed that the right thing to do, because at YTL Group, our motto is that we build the right thing, and we are a generational business, so we don't take shortcuts. And we believe that the right infrastructure to build for Malaysia is an all-IP network. So 2010, we built an all-IP network, the nation's first. We used that to launch 4G, also the nation's first. But with that strong foundation of a national scale all-IP network, that lays a foundation for a lot of flexibility and ability to move quickly because of the innovative nature of an IP-based network, right? Why is the internet moving so quickly? Because it runs on a common protocol called TCP/IP. So going back to 2010, I'm not saying that that's what enabled us to launch 5G,
Right.
but that strong backbone gave us tremendous flexibility to evolve technology quickly and rapidly. We did that in 2015 when we launched 4G LTE. We evolved from the original 4G technology that we had, which is wireless broadband based upon IEEE standard called WiMAX, towards a different standard called 3GPP standard, LTE standard. 3GPP is basically the global body for cellular network evolution. The WiMAX standard was more of an IEEE type alignment, and between these two tech camps, the 3GPP camp won out and got the world's ecosystem. So we were smart people, and we realized that if that's the way the world's switching, and after all, the 4G technology is also running on IP, that gave us a tremendous opportunity to embrace the 3GPP camp of technology and move towards LTE, 4G LTE. Now, in 2015, when we were readying our network to transform into 4G LTE to support mobility and SIM cards and so on, the biggest challenge really was device availability. So we got good at building relationship with device manufacturers. All the device manufacturers, minus Apple, we had strong relationship with. It didn't happen automatically. We work hard to win the trust. We work hard to show that we know what we're doing, and we are able to be the champion to bring the devices to Malaysia and launch the next generation voice technology called Voice over LTE. So Voice over LTE is something that's very interesting. In 2016, we launched Voice over LTE, the first in Malaysia. The others only launched Voice over LTE 3 years ago in 2020, 2021. So a full 5 years after us. what does it take to launch voice over LTE? Well, as the name suggests, voice over LTE means that the voice traffic is carried by the LTE network, which is a data-centric network. So what that means is that voice over LTE is the first transition from circuit switch network to an IP-based network, whereby the data and voice all ride on IP technology. Now, why weren't the other telcos in Malaysia able to launch that earlier? As I mentioned earlier, they started with a circuit switch-based foundation. It was rather painful, difficult, hard for them to migrate towards this new voice over LTE technology. They only done so, like I said, 2-3 years ago. So the bottom line of this is that when you understand how technology evolves, if you place the right bet, that buys you tremendous flexibility. And that's what we do as engineers, because we have to understand how technology evolves and know exactly where we stand in the innovation curve and make the right chess move.
To expand on that a bit, Mr. Wing, now you said that you went to the board and you said, this is how it should look like in the future. But not everyone in the corporate setting are engineering minded, perhaps. They're more financially minded or they're more resource minded. So how did you manage to communicate the importance of these sort of innovative technologies to someone who is perhaps a more layman?
Yeah. It didn't occur to me when I was young that I'll end up sitting here at this studio talking to you, Sean.
You're right.
Because I never imagined myself working in Malaysia. I was born and raised in Hong Kong, worked in America for a long period of time. So how would you end up in Malaysia? So let me just backtrack that to 2009 when I talked to the YTL group. They actually went to the United States to look for companies to seek out to do case studies learning as to how they built 4G network.
Okay.
This was right after they were offered the license to launch 4G in Malaysia, the YTL group, along with a few others. But the directors, which is, as you know, the Yo family, they're all engineer trained. So it's very interesting because when I engage with them, when I talk to them, they think like engineers because they are indeed engineers. Now, they came from the civil engineering background, but nonetheless engineers. And engineers, whether it's civil, electrical, we all think alike because we are all problem solvers. So in that regard, I was very delighted to have met the directors of YTL Group, which I believe has what it takes to build something from ground up at a national scale and see through it. If you look around the world, there aren't too many so-called startup telco networks. Most of the telco networks have been there for a long time, and there's the same old players. And there are some exceptions. SoftBank in Japan is an exception. T-Mobile in America is an exception, and a few others as well. So there aren't that many startup telcos. Now, why is that the case? Because telco business is a very high CapEx business, meaning that you require a lot of capital to get into the business. And it also requires a lot of capital to stay in the business because it's a scale game. It's a national scale game. So it's not for the faint of heart. Now, there are two things that attracted me to the YTL group. Number one, the directors, they're very comfortable with large-scale infrastructure investment. After all the business they're in, we're large-scale infrastructure business. So they know how to finance it. They know how to operate it. And importantly, they have a very clear mind. They want to give back to the country. And when we met in London to discuss this opportunity, at the invitation, I went to London to meet them.
Right.
The discussions was all about, I can still vividly remember till today, how, if we can build a 4G network nationwide, how can we change life? How can we improve the outcome for the underserved? How can we create a level playing field for all Malaysians, regardless of background, to have a better chance to innovate and to do better? And that is a cause that I like to be part of. And that's what attracted me to Malaysia.
So that's interesting because earlier in the first segment, we talked about how you felt the world should be when you were still in the States, when you had to make those very expensive per minute charge calls back to your mother. And then here you are, much further down the career path and you have pioneered voice over LTE, which has revolutionized the affordability of
absolutely. We have the lowest service charge and the most advanced network, no compromise. Now, so if I may fast forward, because voice over LTE was 2016 story.
Right.
But in light of the fact that we have built an OIP network and we've moved our network to voice and data to an IP plane, we also make the next leap forward because we saw a lot of demand. The data consumption on our network is very high because we do have very good performance and people consume a lot more data on our network than other people's network. So we need to scale our network and add more capacity. Now, once again, that's what engineers add value, right? There are two ways to add capacity. One is the old school way, which is to call the same vendor we've been using all these years and say, I'd like to buy a few more boxes. And they would say, yeah, sure, about $2 million US. You send to us, we send you boxes. And then I thought that, well, as engineers, obviously we cannot just settle with a default answer. We have to find ways to innovate and find ways to break the economics. So there's a new trend happening around the world called cloud native network. Cloud native network is a concept that follows the introduction of cloud-based technology, such as the hyperscalers that we've seen, like the Amazon Web Service or Google Cloud, whereby we are moving a traditional proprietary telco network towards a IP-based network, very much aligned to the architecture of a hyperscaler. That will introduce new economics. When it comes to the unit costs, will go down dramatically and having more scalability at the same time, no compromise. Now, it was a leap of faith to re-engineer our network to embrace cloud-based architecture. We did that in 2020. And that was right at the beginning of the pandemic. Because with the pandemic, the consumption of data has gone up tremendously. All of us recall those days. And it's still unreal, right?
Well, because everyone was stuck at home.
Exactly.
So they're either doing remote work or they were just at home.
So let me give you an example. Telco networks, we look at peak hours based upon usage patterns. And typical peak hours would, generally speaking, align to people's activities, meaning that morning, you get some peak. Midday, you get some peak. At night, you get some peak after 10 o'clock because people want to go have fun, watch movies and stuff like that. So you have three major peaks throughout the day. During pandemic, peak starts at 7 a.m. and ends at 2 a.m.
So it's a constant.
Absolutely, because people are all at home. What do they do when they're home? So with that kind of demand surge, we had to rapidly scale our network. As I mentioned to you, we decided to move towards a cloud-based architecture. Now, with that kind of demand curve coming in, we had to jump at it as opposed to moving slowly. We knew what it takes to do it, but we hadn't pulled the trigger to do it. And when we saw this surge of traffic in the early part of 2020, we said, let's pull the trigger and do it. So we engineered our network from a traditional network architecture in the back end to a cloud-based architecture during pandemic, but everything was done mostly online and with a few guys in PPP wearing masks in our data center. We had our vendor, our partner, that's US based. So we basically run the entire engagement with those guys guiding us remotely, and our guys did the work locally. And we engineered our network, the heart of our network, our core network, from a traditional network architecture towards a cloud-native architecture during the pandemic. We did that in less than 4 months' time.
So but the scale of the project and the timeline in which you achieved it is kind of crazy.
Spectacular.
When you think it's actually
amazing.
It's unheard of, pretty
amazing.
much.
I'm so proud of my team.
So what was it like for you to coordinate such an effort that involved local and international partners remotely most of the time because, well, the restriction of movement?
We did the negotiation of the deal using Zoom calls. I still remember doing the negotiation when I'm walking around the neighborhood. I live in a small little community. During the pandemic, we are allowed to still walk within the compound. And I need my walk. I can't be doing Zoom call all day long, so I need to go out there and walk. And then the partner decided to call me and negotiate some final points. And I said, if you don't mind, I'm going to talk, but I'm going to walk. So I talk and walk, and that's how we finalized the deal and kick off the project. So
that's very non-conventional.
Yeah.
Because we picture like a boardroom setting where you have people signing, but here you are basically getting your steps in your cardio and closing the deal that way.
Absolutely. Unconventional time. Call for unconventional measures.
which I think is important. It's something you mentioned, that engineers should be able to be very adaptable
Absolutely.
to new circumstances.
Absolutely.
And I think, people say that COVID and the pandemic was a black swan event. It's not bound to happen for a while again, hopefully. But it's something that obviously you and your team were very prepared for, because to achieve that kind of scale up operation, and keep in mind for our listeners and viewers, these are two different architectures completely, right? They're
Hugely different.
they're hugely different. The requirements, the maintenance operations.
Suffice to say, it wasn't an easy sell, even internally. So I had to help build confidence within the team that this is the path. And as leader, it's our job to lead by examples and actually stay engaged, fully hands-on, to make sure that our team knows that we are 100% behind them and back them. So literally, I was working nonstop with the technical team, with the business team, to ensure that this project comes to fruition.
Actually, I want to ask you as well, Mr. Wayne, because you mentioned it was a hard sell. And in fact, one of our previous guests, our child from Sam Hayden, actually, she was very cognizant about the hard sell, because as engineers, oftentimes you have to convince the board, like you mentioned. And so, but also for investors, when you talk about the really technical infrastructure, especially scaling up to cloud computing, what's that like? How do you communicate that to your investments, or potential investors? That must be you must have deployed so much negotiation and education skills to be able to actually get them to say, okay, we're on board with this, we'll fund this project. What was that like for you?
I think the key is communication.
Right.
I think engineers, we might be very good at the language of computers or machines, but we also must be very good at the language of the human.
Language of the human. Could you elaborate on that?
Because at the end of the day, it's not about boxes that you have. It's about getting the people to support the boxes that you have. So you write a check, people will send you boxes, but the real differentiator is how do you use those boxes to create value. Now, in our case, of course, before we even get our first box, we need to get people's buy-in. So
right.
I think we need to have a proper educational narrative to help the stakeholders understand why we make this move, what are the risks, how do we mitigate the risks, and give them the confidence to pull the trigger.
I see. So I think that's a very important lesson, because I think it's oftentimes for engineers, they can get caught up with the jargon, the lingo, right, the technical speak, and they forget that, well, actually the vast majority of the support structures around them are actually not engineering related. So I think you've mentioned something important there. So I also want to go back to first to 5G, right? Because that's kind of exciting. And we'll talk more about that in the third segment. But I wanted to ask you, what were some of the initial technical challenges, even with YTL's very clear investment, building the foundation with 4G LTE technology and moving to 5G? What were some of the initial challenges you encountered?
Yeah, so because of the fortuitous investment into building a cloud-native architecture back in 2020,
right,
we all have a fantastic foundation to launch 5G. So because 5G is also running on cloud-native architecture. So that's why I hope you can see by now that if you make the right strategic decision, you enable and open up new moves that you can take while your competitors struggle, right?
Well, some of the viewers might think you might have some sort of incredible foresight, because you've kept making really good bets, essentially, because you've made the initial investments and it's turned out to be true. How did you manage that?
If you look at my career, I've been in this driving seat of innovation since, I would say, mid-90s.
Right.
And I think I've learned to be humble, and I've learned to continue to have the hunger to learn. And the technology world is not a secret. If you pay attention to it, you know where the world is moving. Even though we live in Malaysia, Malaysia is a beautiful country, very comfortable country, fantastic people, good food, but we are not the change maker when it comes to technology. So we cannot be inwardly focused and talk to each other in Malaysia and figure out where the world is going. We must reach out to the world and be in touch with the world and know where the world's heading. Because every day, people are making amazing things happening throughout the world. But it's our job to reach out and get to know what's going on. If we were to stick our head out and look at what the world's doing, then we know how to apply that understanding into the context of Malaysia. And that's what I do every day. Till today, even, I always make sure that I'm on top of the game. It's my job. Otherwise, I have no business to be here.
With that being said, so you basically, after making all these essentially good decisions for the future, because you didn't stop planning for the future ever, essentially, right? Because to get to 5G, that's kind of, especially first to 5G nationwide, that's an achievement for sure. But I want to ask you, what was it like for you? Because you mentioned education and communication. How do you communicate the importance of a really revolutionary technology like 5G to someone? How can you explain to them, or like, hey, actually, this is why this is the future?
Yeah, so there's been multiple, if you are a local followers of the telco industry, you realize that there's been numerous attempts to get started on 5G. Back in the, well, I don't want to go back in history too much because this is about engineering thinking. But if you look at the history, you know that the industry had tried several times to build a consortium around 5G, and then the pandemic hit, that thing fell apart, and then during pandemic, no one knew what's going on, and finally the government took the bull by the horn by saying that, well, you know, we can't wait. The government needs to be the catalyst to drive a national policy towards building a single wholesale network as a government-driven initiative initially, and get the industry to support that. And when that happened, we look at where the world is heading. We all know that the pandemic is going to end. We all know that everyone's moving towards connected society. Because of the pandemic, everyone's forced to have a connected society. That becomes the new norm. When that is the new norm, then you need a lot of data. The data quality needs to improve. So to us, 5G is a very natural and important accelerator for the country. So when the government decided to move towards this new policy, we were very supportive. But having said that, commercial construct negotiation takes time. So we've been following with keen interest since the March of 2021, when DNB was formed, that this is an entity that we should put some focus on, and we negotiated. Now, DNB being a neutral entity, opened up the doors to all the local telcos to test the equipment, test the new 5G radio, and so on and so forth. Now, for whatever reason, we were the last to be given the equipment to test. Other larger telcos were given perhaps first priority. So they started early. But we didn't get our hands onto the 5G radio to test until late August of 2021. So we were the last to actually have the opportunity to actually kick the tires and know how that radio integrates with our network. After we tested the radio, we felt that we knew exactly what needs to be done to bring that up and integrate it into our network. We placed the order of the hardware required to bring in the new equipment to support 5G. Now, as you recall, that was still in the middle of pandemic, towards the end, no less, but the supply chain is still disrupted. So we order from big name guys, right? Dells and HPs and so on. And all these guys were telling us that there's going to be at least an 8-week lead time for us to get the equipment. So we said, well, you know, it is what it is. So let's place the order and hope that the equipment arrive as soon as possible. So we've been waiting actually since August for the equipment, and it only arrived in October 2021. So once we received the equipment, thanks to my good colleagues, everyone worked so hard, everyone's very laser focused to help make sure that 5G becomes a reality in this country. So we work literally day and night. And because we have this fantastic foundation of a cloud native architecture, which I mentioned to you, is a foundation for 5G, we were naturally predisposed to have the architecture to support this. So we were able to launch the same year in December 15, 2021. So if I may just play back, we only received the hardware, the servers, in October. We launched literally in 2 months' time.
Like I said, I can't imagine that you
it
were the last
to be one of the fastest 5G launch in the world. And just to put things in context, I'm not here to talk down on people.
Right.
The other operator launched 12 months later. And one particular operator launched 18 months later. It's all in the facts.
And they had the equipment to test earlier, according to your
Yeah.
testimony.
So I would say no. I would say no more.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. I think that speaks for itself. I mean, like you said, it's facts.
That's why it's important. Engineering thinking.
That's right. Yes. Now I want to rewind a little bit because I think, well, that's an impressive case study, Mr. Wing. But I want to rewind back to your time in the States where you worked for Sprint Nextel. Sprint Nextel, for those of you who don't know, is a telecom provider in the States. And they were at the time third largest with over 54 million customers. So a juggernaut for sure. Now, in your time in Sprint Nextel, you had a very long career there too. And you were the Senior Director of Tech Innovation.
That's right.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit for the benefit of our listeners and our audience is you pioneered a lot of thinking such as agile methodology. And agile methodology, for those who are unaware perhaps, is a way of conducting business in a very flexible, adaptable way. Why is it so important to be agile?
It's so important. The world moves very fast. So when I was, I did some graduate work at MIT. So one of the professor was a guy called Charles Fine. And he actually was the dean of Asia School of Business here a few years back as a partnership with MIT. So I got a chance to say hello to Charles again. But one thing I learned from Charles was this concept of clock speed. He's a global expert when it comes to supply chain. And the word that he taught me was something called clock speed. Clock speed is basically your cycle, right? We are moving into a high clock speed society. I think it's safe to say that things move so much faster now. Innovation happens so much faster now. Now, if you look at the world's innovation, there are two major curves. One curve is hardware curve. Hardware innovation tends to come a little bit slower because hardware requires a lot more engineering touch point. Electrical engineering and mechanical and so on and so forth. Chemical even when it comes to like batteries and stuff like that. So the innovation curve tends to be a little bit longer. But if you look at the world of software, the innovation curve happens literally in weeks. Software feature get launched in weeks. Startup will live and die based upon the next release. So I think it's safe to say that if you look at the world's innovation, in the realm of internet, most of the innovation happens at the software level. So back in 2001, I came to that realization. And I came to that realization right when we were launching the first national wireless network in America, wireless data network called Sprint PCS. So I was a chief architect for that. And I was responsible for all the IT systems architecture in support of the wireless network.
Right.
And we did a board presentation. And one of the board members was the CEO of Hallmark Card. Hallmark Card, now no one uses those cards anymore. Back in those days, people use it for greeting cards, birthday cards, and anniversary cards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Hallmark is the leader in the industry, right? So the CEO was on our board, and he's an older gentleman. And we were showing a movie clip of Star Wars using the cellular modem attached to a laptop. Because back in the days of 2000, the only way to get data, not through a phone, there's no such thing. Steve Jobs has not invented iPhone yet, right? So the only way to do it is through a data dongle. For those that are at a little bit older age group, you know that. So you plug it to a PC or laptop, and that's how you get your data. So we plug it to a laptop, and we show this clip. And obviously, the quality is not super high because back in the days, the performance of the data network was around 84, 86 kilobit per second. In 5G world, 800 megabit per second, right? So we are dealing with a very, very narrow band network. But it's great because it's wireless, right? So, and then he said, well, for $2 billion US dollars, this is all we're going to get. Because he looks in the paradigm of an end user consumer. And as an end user consumer, you say, well, I can watch DVD at home, much higher quality, versus this little clip with some kind of buffering and some pixelation. But that's the wrong lens.
Right.
Why is it the wrong lens? Because mobile is never meant to be as high performance as a wireless network. But what mobile gives you is freedom. Freedom you cannot get by tethering to a Ethernet port. So I came to that realization in 2001 that in order to win this game as a mobile data operator, we cannot tell people that you can do the same thing but without wire. We have to do something that you absolutely cannot do when you're wired. So one of our partners, and this is why I think they're important for engineers to understand, we can't solve problem alone. We have to solve problem with other like-minded people. So that's a guy called Philippe Khan. He's very famous for those that do software. Back in the 90s, there's a compiler called Turbo C and Turbo C++. Those of you that are in the age group that actually wrote program back in the 90s and 80s would definitely know this guy called Philippe Khan. He's a legend. He's a French-American that wrote that compiler that make writing software program accessible for many people on PCs. So we are friends. So I was talking to Philippe Khan. And he just had a child. And he was so excited. He used our data card to send a picture from the hospital by taking a picture using his digital camera. That was a first generation digital camera. There's like 2 megapixel digital cameras. And he pulled out the CF card and you take it into the laptop and you upload the file into the laptop and then send it via a software called email over our wireless modem to his parents in France. And he told us that, wow, this was so clumsy, right? And he said that, what if we were to work together and make it much easier? Now, we make those yearly pilgrimage to Japan back in the days, because Japan at the time was the consumer electronics capital of the world. There's a place called Akihabara that if you're a geek, you know about. Because Akihabara is basically where you get all the cool gadgets.
It's known as Electric Town in Japan, I believe, right? And you can get all sort of parts for not just PCs, but they have radio parts there as well.
But back in the days, it's mostly gadgets, right?
Mostly gadgets.
Early 2000 now, not now, right? Early 2000. It's also where we can observe people. So in the world of innovation, there's something called ethnographic research. Ethnographic research means that you basically do research simply by watching people. You don't go talk to people. You don't disturb them. You let them do their thing and you just observe. And you try to extract learnings from it. So that's what we did. When we were in Japan, of course, we spent time visiting the stores, see what kind of gadgets people have, but we also observe how people actually interact with the gadgets. And we saw in early 2000 that all these so-called feature phones, flip phones, they start putting cameras there. Now, the initial use case of cameras on flip phones was to take a picture of you, Sean, and save it to the address book. So the next time that you call me, your picture will show up.
Show up, yeah.
So we told Philippe that, hey, people are now putting cameras in phones, He said, perfect. While we work together, my team will write the software, the microcode, onto the phone to allow for the camera capture a photo and send it to anyone on the address book using the wireless network that you have. And we thought, that sounds like a fun idea. So we created this product called Picture Mail. Picture Mail, I think, is the most successful wireless data product in American history. Picture Mail, we charge $50 US a month for the freedom to be able to send a picture, take a picture, and send a picture to anyone, anywhere in America. $15 US a month is a lot of money, right?
It is.
Even back in the days, right? Especially back in the days.
Especially back in the days, yeah.
And so we thought that was a very successful showcase to demonstrate that if you have the right mindset in solving problem and introducing people to new way of doing things, then you're no longer constrained to the old paradigm and have to compete based upon the old paradigm.
Right.
Because if you keep competing on the old paradigm, then the only way to differentiate is price. Then there's a downward spiral because price can only go down, it won't go up. So when you compete on the same paradigm, then the only tool you have is economics. But if you change paradigm, you free yourself up to new economics.
That's true. You sort of open up new markets and
Absolutely.
new ways of doing things.
Absolutely.
Now going back to that, because I think it was very educational for you to share with us your method of agile thinking and seeing an issue and how to do it better, essentially, than what is currently available. You also pioneered a way of, I believe, disruptive thinking. And because you were so much into innovation, right? And so, but when we think of the word disruptive, that usually is a negative connotation. You don't want to disrupt presentations or whatever it is. But in this case, for the benefit of our viewers who might not be familiar with that sort of that mindset, what is disruptive thinking?
Disruptive innovation is a very powerful concept. It's actually pioneered by a guy called Clayton Christensen. He's a professor at Harvard Business School.
Right.
And we actually worked with Clayton and his team when I was in the sprint to actually apply disruptive innovation in the context of telco industry. So disruptive innovation, in Clayton's language, there are two kinds of innovation. That is incremental innovation, which means that you stay on the same paradigm, but you just make incremental improvement. And that's, honestly speaking, as you can tell by now, no fun.
Right.
And disruptive innovation is to introduce a new paradigm and create new value with which you can redefine the game. So disruptive innovation is not so much disruptive to people's life, but it's disruptive to the current business model.
So it's a disruption to the status quo.
That's right.
Okay.
So Clayton Christensen is a very respected professor. He actually helped Intel. He worked closely with Andy Grove. Andy Grove was one of the most successful CEO in Intel's history. And he's the one that, after Gordon Moore, basically made Intel the household name that it is today. And Andy was having some problem. Because back in the days, again, your father would know this.
Right.
We used to buy Intel base PC. We're chasing the numbers, right? We start with 286, and then we have 286, and 386, and then 486, and then go to Pentium. So because the processor was barely keeping up with the demand of the software, every time there's a new processor comes out, everyone just jump to the store and say, I want that. Because the software demands more than what the processor can give. The problem is that on the line of incremental innovation, Andy out-innovated himself, meaning that he, on a Moore's law basis, every year computing power doubles. And to the point that after Pentium, the demand curve started dropping because finally computing power caught up with the demand of the software. People stop having to buy every single new generation of Intel processors because the last generation is actually good enough for me. I don't need to go buy another computer and then spend 2 hours or 5 hours to migrate my software from one computer to another computer.
Right, yeah.
So then Andy's problem is that he's actually, because of his continuous innovation, his market size starts shrinking. So he went and reached out to Clayton and said, I need some help. And they work side by side. And Clayton Christensen and his team work with Intel and study the market size along with the supply curve and so on of the Intel processor family, market demand, stuff like that. And they came to the conclusion that he's killing himself by going on only one axis. So I don't know whether your listeners or the viewers out there knows that, but Intel decided to disrupt itself by launching a lower cost version of its processor. And the low cost version of the processor is not going on the same axis, but to change the economics curve to go down, but still have decent enough horsepower for the next generation of customers and open up new market opportunities.
Right.
That move of actually taking a high-end processor and disabling certain important components to make it lower horsepower, and in so doing, charge less and open up new market space was unthinkable back in the days.
Because it made the product more accessible to a greater amount of people.
Because he's now able to open up Intel to a much larger market. So that was the first success case of a disruptive innovation, that the company managed to disrupt itself. And Clayton Christensen and his team took that as a case study, as a foundation for him to publish his book called Innovator's Dilemma. So for anyone that want to understand Innovator's Dilemma, read this book. Because the Innovator's Dilemma is not just a concept applicable to Intel. I think it's applicable to all of us. And the concept of being bold enough to disrupt yourself is one that is seldomly practiced in the corporate world. And here's the problem, because in the corporate world, people got lazy. And I don't think, I don't want to be critical. I'm not saying that people are lazy. I'm saying that because of the reward system, because of the culture, we enforce a certain thinking, and it takes a lot to change that thinking. And if you keep following the old way of success and just try to repeat it, then of course you end up being an Intel, or back in the days of Andy Grove, whereby his market starts shrinking because he doesn't have enough tools to compete in the open up new market. So I think this is a very important lesson that I learned back in the early days in my career, thankfully, and I was able to apply that till today.
That's excellent. Thank you very much for sharing your insights about innovation, agile methodology, and also disruptive thinking. Now I want to rewind a bit more before we close out this segment and ask you about your award as the Asian American Engineer of the Year in 2002, because I think it's really important for people who are doing engineering work to think like engineers, to actually be professional in engineering, to be recognized. So can you share with us a little bit about how you received that nomination, the work that led up to it, and what was it like for you to be recognized?
Yeah, in the US, they have this really good culture of recognizing the right kind of behavior and celebrating that. So that was the 53rd year of National Engineers Week, where I got recognized, and I was honored because I was recognized alongside with the Chancellor of UC Berkeley. He's a hero. I'm just a guy, right, from the corporate world. So, but luckily I was able to have that honor, and I'm very grateful for that. But looking back as to why, I think it has something to do with the fact that I was able to break the glass ceiling quite early in my career.
Right.
I became a director, and in America, when you are a director, you are basically executive management, and it's just maybe what people consider a pretty verified space, especially for at that time, back in the days. Okay, I was in the year 1998 when I became a director, and that was my 6th year working at Sprint. So I think my career really took a very fast,
it's like a meteoric rise, yeah.
But breaking that so-called glass barrier to be a corporate executive at that age was unusual. I am thankful for the opportunity given to me, but I think I worked damn hard to earn that.
Sure.
I had a number of patents under my name. And when I was recognized in 1998, there were a number of significant projects that I was able to accomplish. I built a national middleware architecture control system for the entire fiber optics network of Sprint. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that I've done some pretty kick-ass
Safe to say
work.
that you've definitely earned that recognition. But it's nice also to have that official recognition for sure by peers in your industry.
Indeed. And hopefully inspire more people. And I think it's safe to say that now, if you go to Silicon Valley or go to any tech, I mean, Austin is now a very famous tech town as well. But I think now you see Chinese fellows, Indian fellows, they're all doing very well. Jensen Huang's a champion, right? He's a Chinese fellow.
NVIDIA.
We're not playing any race card here, but I think it's refreshing to see that people from different races are now able to have an opportunity to take leadership positions. But back in the days when I was young, it was more rare.
Certainly, yeah. I think that's, and that, like you said, that's a very positive development in the world of engineering, and
Yes.
There's excellence in diversity, and it's, as long as people work hard for it and they've earned that innovation and that right to be successful, essentially.
And working hard is one thing that I learned from my late mother, if I may just elaborate on that point. Let me just say that I didn't just get lucky. I was given the opportunity to join Sprint. And as I mentioned to you, I want to solve this problem of long distance call.
Right, yeah.
So that's why I joined Sprint. But I think after I joined Sprint, through the interview process, they identified me to be someone that is of the skill set needed to join the advanced technology organization. They have an advanced technology department that look at the latest and greatest and help the company move the network, move technology into the new space. So when I joined that team, I was placed in the architecture team. I had no idea what was architecture team. to be honest. I was embarrassed. I was excited, at the same time embarrassed, because I saw the letter of offer that you'll be starting as a software engineer in the architecture team for this advanced technology department. I said, well, this sounds really exciting, but what's architecture, right? I only know architecture by
The building architecture,
the
right?
architecture of a building, not so much architecture of software.
Right.
So I started and I went to the director that hired me. His name is Bruce Ballangy. Till today, I'm very grateful for Bruce. Bruce really opened up my eyes and taught me a lot. And he's what I consider a mentor. So I asked Bruce, I said, Bruce, so honored and excited, and but I have no clue what to do in the context of being a member of the architecture team as a software engineer. Bruce actually interviewed me, and he's the one that decided to hire me. He learned that I like cars, like most guys, I suppose. Like
Sure.
But he knew that I drove a Acura, which is a Honda, type cars, and I like speed.
Okay.
So he talked to me. He said, "Wing, if you're a very good software engineer, you may be a master mechanic for Honda or Acura. If you are a good architect, then you're a master mechanic of Honda, Acura, BMW, Mercedes, Porsches, and so on. So I want you to aspire to be a master mechanic that can handle all these brands." So then he was speaking my language, right? So okay, now I know. So the expectation of a good architect is one that understands the intricacies of different technologies and how they work together. Okay, I got it. But I had no background in the area, right? I only know about writing messaging software, and that's what I did before joining Sprint. I was writing messaging software to allow for high-speed messaging for a retailer. That was my first job.
Right.
So how do I pivot, right? But luckily, Sprint was the pioneer in providing internet backbone in America. As you know, internet was the start of the internet is called DARPANET. DARPANET was a research network for the top universities in America. And Sprint was a major provider of the backbone. So at my desk, I had pretty high-speed connectivity to the internet. I was, at that time, from my desk, I could do 150 megabits per second, which is super fast in those days, right? So what I did was that, well, in order to be a master mechanic of multiple brands, then I better go deep in all the technologies that the company is using. Who do I go for all these learning points? I decided not to go to anyone for learning points. I decided to go to the internet for learning points. So I read up all the journals that has anything to do with the space that I'm in. People go have lunch, I stay back. I bring a sandwich and I work through lunch. People finish work at 6, they go home. I just order some dabao and I continue until 8, 9 o'clock. I read incessantly. I read from Monday through Friday, every day of the week. Sometimes weekend I also come back to the office to catch up. And through that, I was able to get a lot more comfortable and conversant and eventually get mastery of so many different kinds of technologies and how they piece together. And I applied that learning in my day job. And that's why my career accelerated so much. I was managing people that are double my age, right, in that early part of my career. And initially, people had say, "Who is this young punk? Who is he to be my boss?" And I had to work extra hard to earn the respect. But I earned the respect by knowing the stuff better than them.
Right.
And it took some time, but I earned people's respect.
But you got there.
Yes.
It took some time, but you got there. I think that's important.
It took a few months.
Right.
But fundamentally, I think it's about the humility. I know that I know my stuff, but I have to be willing to listen to people and be humble to taking their views, so don't come across as cocky, that I know it all, no such thing. But if you have the humility, but you have your grounding, then you can carry on a conversation that is assertive. And you hold your ground, and you get to communicate your viewpoint and get people to see your viewpoint and win their trust. Because once you have people's trust, they'll be willing to fight for you.
Right. I think that was an excellent sharing session from Mr. Wing. For our second part, the highlight, And so it's not just innovative and disruptive thinking that's important, it's also hard work, just going through and making sure you're the master of your craft. So we're going to recess here a bit, and then we're going to meet back for the last segment, which is the creative section. So stay tuned. Engineering thinkers, welcome back to our third segment, which is the creative section, where we're going to ask Mr. Wing his hopes, his visions for the future of 5G technology. And so, Mr. Wing, going back now to, well, YTL being first to 5G here in Malaysia, what's your vision for the future in terms of 5G technology?
So I've been in the industry for 35 years now. I think it's safe to say that this is the first time in the technology history where a wireless technology can perform at the level on par to a wireline size, aka fiber technology. So when you have a wireless technology that matches the performance of fiber, and you allow for that freedom to be introduced, then the innovation possibility is limitless. That's why we are so bullish and so excited to launch 5G so much faster than other people, because we feel that we can't wait to put it in people's hands and let the people out there figure out how to use 5G to create innovation. Innovation should not come from guys like us. Innovation should come from the society, right? And if we give people the right tool, they will know how to use that tool to create value, whether it's for work, for learning, or for play.
Right. So that's very important. Now, we had one of your colleagues in before, Arafong Chiman, who's head of the YTL AI Labs.
He's our AI guru.
That's right. And so I want to ask you, what was some of your plans for YTL Communications' future regarding AI, and how you're going to use that to maybe, head start 5G?
Yeah, similar to the platform that attracted me, thanks to the directors of YTL Group, to build this nationwide advanced IP-based network. I think that is the same reason that Chiman decided to give us his time, because he also sees this amazing opportunity to use what we've built as a platform to drive massive AI diffusion throughout this young country called Malaysia. I think it's safe to say that while AI started out in Western Hemisphere, AI should not be the domain of Western civilization. And I think under Chiman's leadership, we're able to not only work together with NVIDIA to build this massive AI cloud using the world-class, top-of-the-line super chip called GB200.
Right.
But we are also, through Chiman and his team, building this Malaysian sovereign LLM that allow for AI to be deployed safely and responsibly in Malaysia, where the LLM fully understand the Malaysian culture, the Malaysian language, and the Malaysian sensitivities.
And of course, when Arafong was here, he talked about how important sustainability was to him. Now, YTL, the AI side with the data centers, they plan to have their own onboard renewable energy source, which I thought was very inspirational, which I felt was very important, a message to give to the next generation of engineers. What do you feel about that, and how does sustainability in the future for YTL Communications, what does that mean to you?
I've been here for 15 years now. Since I've been here, every year at YTL Group, we have a leadership conference where we bring leaders from around the world. We are international companies, so we have businesses in Europe, in Japan, Australia, and so on and so forth. So we all gather together at our conference center, and we share the best ideas and also get inspirational words from our top leaders. So I've been very impressed that since I've been here since 2010, every year in the leadership conference, sustainability has been a topic of discussion. In fact, the eldest daughter of our group chairman, Ruth Yo, she's actually director of sustainability for the group. So that shows the foresight of our group that we have been thinking and acting along the line of sustainability. Now, when it comes to data centers, I think, as you know, if you are in Malaysia, you have heard the word data center many times, because you cannot avoid talking about data center in light of the fact that we have been fortunate as a country to be the data center hub of the region. Now, there are three reasons why Malaysia is the data center hub of the region. Number one, we are near Singapore. Singapore has the advantage of having global connectivity through the early investment of data center complex by international companies into Singapore, with very strong international connections through submarine cable and so on and so forth. Now, Malaysia is not landlocked like Singapore. We have ample land. Land is cost effective. We have sufficient power. And we also have water, self-sustained. And these are actually the three major ingredients beyond fiber for data centers to proliferate. Last but not least, we have very good people. So with all these so-called prerequisite advantages, Malaysia has edged out the regional neighbors to be the hub of data center activities, especially in Johor. Now, we all know that the world is fighting carbon emission. The world is fighting climate change. We all know that data center is a source of pollution if we were to use dirty power. Data center use a lot of computing and therefore a lot of electricity. If you were to fall back to the traditional dirty power of coal, then you are basically innovate while killing the earth. So from our group's perspective, our true north has always been building the right thing. So if we want to build the right thing in the context of data center, then it needs to be green. So we had the fortune, the group has land bank, where we have land in the Johor area, but the land bank is not large enough. So we expanded the land holding by acquiring the plantation land nearby, our land bank. So the total acreage was over 2,000 acres for our data center.
That's a large facility. Yeah.
Yes. But what would be fascinating for you to know is that only 250 acres are used for the actual data center park. So what happens to the remaining 1,700 acres, you may ask? Solar farm. This is one of the most massive solar farms in the region, along with battery storage. So that is the angle that we believe can help us drive innovation in a sustainable way, where we can have the best hyperscalers located onshore in Malaysia, so Malaysians are no longer disadvantaged in terms of latency and performance relative to our neighbors down south to access the world's best computing resources. And we contribute further by bringing our own AI cloud into this Johor Data Center Park, where we are hosting and we'll be launching soon phase 1 with 20 megawatts of AI compute capacity using the latest and greatest NVIDIA GB200 superchip. That's absolutely amazing.
Incredible, yeah. So thank you very much, Mr. Wing, for sharing that with us. And also to our viewers and listeners, what an inspirational story that 5G and AI have a future here in Malaysia and not just overseas. And it's not just, like Mr. Wing said, the domain of other countries, other nations, other regions, but we can take ownership of it here and have the opportunities and capabilities here. So Mr. Wing, now that you've spoken about 5G and the vision that you had for 5G and the possibilities of AI moving forward with the new data centers, what is it like to combine the two concepts together?
Yeah, this is the ultimate digital infrastructure play. If you look at what we've done so far, we have a national size network, high quality, OIP, and we just recently announced that we are also investing into fiber business, where we're building 1,600 km of fiber from north to south along the rail track in Peninsula, not to mention our ability to actually build fiber in Johor and other localities. So now we are completing the picture. We have world-class 5G network. We have ability to deploy world-class fiber network. And we have this data center park where we are hosting our own AI cloud with a sovereign Malaysian LLM. Then we are now in a prime position to allow for AI to be diffused throughout the country, through our network. Because ultimately, AI is about democratizing the use of it. AI should not be in the hands of only the rich and powerful. AI should be a platform that uplifts the lives of the entire society. AI should not just be a Klang Valley story. AI should be a Malaysian story that crosses both east and west, urban, suburban, and rural. Now, for that to happen, you must have a robust network. We have that network. You must have the AI horsepower. We have the AI cloud. You must have the AI workload on top, the enabler, such as our Malay LLM. And you must have the ability to attract developers to build on top of it, whether it is individual developers or enterprises, to use this magnificent facility that we have in Johor and the LLM that we have to launch AI in a safe and responsible way in Malaysia. I believe that we have all the key ingredients, building block, to bring this all together and have the network capability to distribute it equally to all corners of the nation. And I think that's how we're going to come together and merge Malaysia from where we are today into a top 20 country when it comes to AI in the world. And that's our objective.
That is an incredible and stunning vision. And I'm very glad, Mr. Wing, that you shared it with all our viewers, because I think it's very important to be hopeful and also to take advantage of the future, a very exciting future, like you mentioned, being able to marry these two concepts together and to, like you said, democratize AI and ensure that it's not only the large corporations, that everyone has access to this sort of computing power, this sort of knowledge gathering power as well. So it's been a very inspirational and very eye-opening journey we've had with Mr. Wing. And now please stay with us for our closing remarks. So engineering thinkers, as we conclude this episode, and we thank Mr. Wing for being here today.
Thank you.
CEO of YTL Communications. I hope all of you have learned a lot from him, especially through his case studies and his different skills and vast experience through his illustrious career. I also like to take this opportunity to thank our wonderful media partners, MMM Group Berhad, for hosting the show and having the wonderful crew look after us all the time. Now, I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next episode. However, before we leave, always remember our message to you. Great day, engineer.
Greater world.
Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next episode.
Hi, my name is Wing, the CEO of YTL Communications. I think it's safe to say that as an engineer, I was able to use the internet to learn and apply myself throughout my life. You should do the same, especially with the amazing internet access that you have now. As they say in this episode, greater engineer, greater world.
Hello, engineering thinkers. Thank you for joining us in our program today. We'd like to invite you to like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and also follow us on our other platforms such as Buzzsprout, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. The links for all those will be in the description below. Thank you very much for joining us for this episode, but we have so much more planned for you. So make sure you don't miss out on exciting guests and topics to come. Cheers.